2022 was the year of big-time fantasy adaptations.
Oh my god, bro.
Oh, hell no, man. What the fuck, man? Get your ass on, boy.
How did that go? 2023 is the year of big-time video game adaptations.
Hello, Witcher fans. The wait is over. The Witcher Blood Origin is now streaming on Netflix.
Few, I think, are as contentious with what was done to the original source material by people even before an adaptation came out. I am, of course, referring to Naughty Dog's The Last of Us Part 2.
Please stop!
But that story really starts with The Last of Us DCL that did what it did to Ellie. Now, there are those people who will say that even in the original game release that Ellie was
Gay, I'm really gay, I'm super duper gay.
Do you know where that came from? Neil Druckmann. At the end of the day, does it really matter that a made-up character that is portrayed by a voice actor and consists of pixels and doesn't really exist, that someone will come along and take them and put ideology, gender politics, ESG score-driven crap over the top of them? Well, for some people it does. Just like for some people it matters what people do to Tolkien.
Because the stone sees only downward.
What?
What people do to Robert Jordan.
Over here!
I put out a video probably about a week ago covering The Last of Us and some of the images that we got. Now, it has been a long time since I have had a lot of people come to my channel just to tear it down and to say things about my review, negative things. And the last time that happened, as a matter of fact, was Wheel of Time, before it came out. I received essentially the same amount of attention, negatively, and downvoting that I am receiving for what I initially said about The Last of Us, the HBO adaptation that premieres January 15th. It's interesting, it's weird, right? Because all those trolls disappeared as soon as the show started. It's almost like they were bots. It's almost like they weren't really fans of the show. Why should it be any different with the $100 million investment that is The Last of Us? Let's take a look at a review. This one comes from The Insider, and it says, The Last of Us is a better game than a TV show. Now, this triggered a whole lot of weeping and gnashing and, oh my God, transphobia,
Human sacrifice, dogs and cats living together, mass hysteria.
However, were these real people? To real people with a show that hasn't even come out yet, whose marketing plan has been gender politics, pronouns, race-swapped casting, and focusing on LGBTQ storylines that were only...
Jesus. What, you know this guy or something? Who the hell's Frank?
He was my partner.
tangential at best within the original gameplay. Are those people real? This Insider review was written by Kristen Acuna. HBO's big budget adaptation debuts again on Sunday. We all know the story of this. If you don't know what the hell The Last of Us is, go watch the gameplay. The first season rushes through events of Game 1, feeling hollow. That is the big takeaway before we get into the details of The Last of Us. Why do you think that is with Neil Druckmann on board? Why would they be rushing through the events of the first game? Well, Neil Druckmann and his agenda were all about...
What you got there?
Bigot sandwiches.
Smells good.
They want to kill a little boy because he shaved his head.
I wasn't allowed. It's the rule. I broke it.
Now, this review says, like the game, the series follows a dangerous cross-country mission by Joel Miller, unfortunately cast by Pedro, I am not going to stand up for Gina Carano, Pascal, and begrudgingly sets out to deliver Ellie, portrayed by, as we now have learned, gender-fluid Bella Ramsey. When did that happen? Oh yeah, it's part of the marketing plan for this show. A young girl who appears to be immune to the virus, to a group called the Fireflies in hopes they can find a cure. Now, this is a hell of a game to play. As a matter of fact, I just rewatched all of the gameplay of the original Last of Us, the remastered version. It's a hell of an amazing story. Now, this reviewer said they watched all 9 episodes of the series and says that it's much better to play that game than to watch Bella Ramsey and Pedro Pascal not really be Ellie and Joel. Other than the first half of the pilot and the series' 3rd episode, most of The Last of Us slogs along with a great few moments here and there. Nothing else. Much of the series is pretty dull for an apocalyptic thriller, which shouldn't be the case for a show involving a pair traversing a country full of the undead. Except it's not full of the undead. Not even close. This is the article. I am reading from the article. This is not salty ad-libbing here. The series from creator Craig Mazin, who did Chernobyl, and of course, the one and only Neil Druckmann, who people in my comments section on my only other Last of Us HBO show series said that I seem to really have it in for old Neil.
Who is he?
He's an asshole, sir.
I know that. What's his name?
That is his name, sir. Asshole. Major asshole.
So the series rushes through the first game's meaty plot in a season that never allows viewers to connect as deeply with the game's heartbreaking story. So this is not an adaptation, then. This is not an adaptation of The Last of Us from 2013. That game is legendary. It changed the genre. Why? Because of the story. If you take away the story, as we've heard, Craig Mazin, not a fan of what he says, zombie movies. Neil Druckmann, ideologue, all about the trans agenda, Abby, all this other bullshit. If you take away the story, this is not an adaptation. And I've been saying this since the first video I did. What if this is the wheel of time of video game adaptations? To go back to the article, most bizarrely, the series strangely lacks in the dead department. One of the things that Mazin said they were going to do is take a lot of violence out of the show. Well, what was the video game?
You dead asshole!
There's a whole lot of violence. Throughout the 9-episode first season, the dead only appear briefly in 4 episodes. What was the game about? This game is spent 98% of the time battling your way through the infected, trying not to breathe spores. Oh, spoilers, they took the spores out of the HBO adaptation. They're now tentacles? Tendrils? What? Despite running rampant in the game, the mutant zombified creatures are so scarce in the series that it's unbelievable. This is from Insider that the survivors haven't risen up, killed all of them, and returned the world to normal by now. This is from Insider. Why? This is another non-adaptation. And again, I'm going to say this over and over and over again. The reason why this show exists is to push the messaging that they're putting out there. What are we getting? We're getting pronouns. We're getting transgender stuff. We're getting, if you don't like the race swaps, you're a racist. We've seen all this before. Instead, The Last of Us merely checks off all the boxes, yeah, I bet it does, of the first game in a hollow, truncated adaptation. Though it often follows the game beat for beat, yeah, I got kind of raked over the coals for that in some of my reactions to some of the images that were put out there, because I didn't know who the hell anyone was, because they didn't look like the characters from the game at all. Oh yeah, and people really didn't like the fact that I said they didn't cast more feminine girls or women as Ellie, and they went with a more masculine look with Bella Ramsey. People said I was being so cruel to Bella Ramsey. Well, what did Bella Ramsey come out and say? That she doesn't have a gender. You know, guys, I have eyes. I can use them. I have a brain. I'm going to use that too.
You're goddamn right.
Though it often follows the game beat for beat, the series speeds through some interesting groups and areas that easily could have been a focus for an entire season. In doing so, it's tough to grow any sort of attachment to many characters or feel anything when they inevitably die. That was one thing the game did. It made you care about people. Remember Tess?
About Tess, I don't even know.
Here's how this thing's gonna play out. You don't bring up Tess. Ever.
Pasting the series makes it look like The Last of Us could be a short 2-season limited series. Often it feels like someone at HBO simply watched every cutscene from the game and based their adaptation on that instead of actually playing through the game to understand its emotional core and the details that made it beloved. I'm not shocked. It's a massive letdown because The Last of Us has had everything at its disposal to succeed. Not only is the game's original creator, Neil Druckmann, you call that something to succeed, working closely on the series by executive producing, writing, and directing, but according to a report in The New Yorker, HBO spent upwards of $100 million on the season's first series. Well, what did they spend on the Wheel of Time? $80 million. What did we get? Amazon's Wheel of Time. Non-adaptation, gender politics, race caste swapping, messaging. Absolutely nothing about the spirit and story that Robert Jordan wrote. The reviewer says that she suspects The Last of Us may have similarly suffered from some pandemic limitations due to the number of contained scenes with small amounts of cast in the finished product, and as we're all learning, it was all complete bullshit. Aside from Netflix's recent adaptation of The Witcher and Arcane and Paramount's Sonic film franchise, many video game adaptations are consistently massive risks that disappoint. Well, what about Halo? Why didn't you put Halo in this article? Now, this reviewer said, Episode 3 is by far the series' best, delivering 76 excellent minutes of television. Oh, Christ. I bet you that's going to be the gay storyline because that's how Hollywood works. The series' third episode featuring Nick Offerman and Murray Bartlett is the standout anomaly and an early contender for one of the best standalone episodes of TV.
Well, fuck him.
Despite vastly improving a character's backstory from the game. So I was right. Salty was right again in my initial review. If you watch this show, realize that they took one entire episode out of a 10-episode series to cram the entire first game, The Last of Us, into 9 episodes. Insider says the series' strongest performances come from Merle Dandridge, who reprises her role as the leader of the Fireflies, and Storm Reed, who appears in one episode. The review says it's tough to get invested in the show's 2 leads who spend a majority of the series bickering until late in the season. While this is their modus operandi in the game, it doesn't translate well on screen until the season is almost over. Throughout, viewers may wonder why Ellie, a Spitfire with a penchant for cursing, has such a sailor's mouth when it comes across more naturally in the game. Here, it seems like Ellie is cursing for the sake of it. I mean, just like saying she's gender fluid for the sake of it. Yeah, I don't care. It's true. Another highlight is the addition of a deaf actor. Where have we seen that one before? In a later episode, which would have felt revolutionary if The Walking Dead didn't do it first in its later seasons to great acclaim. You gotta love ESG score. Driven narratives. The article goes on, but it often feels like The Last of Us is merely moving through the motions of the game without its spirit. Yeah, to the surprise of no one. If you love the game series, The Last of Us is, at the least, worth checking out. But there are far better zombie and apocalyptic series to watch right now, ranging from All of Us Are Dead to Alice in Borderland. It's brutal. It's pretty damn brutal. Overall, The Last of Us is more thrilling to play. The game's shelf life will long outlive the series. Wow. Again, it's been a long time since I've had so many people who seem so intimately connected to the production of something like The Last of Us come in and offer so many details as to why I was wrong with what I said with my previous video. And of course, we have the people who wave a crazy looking flag with rainbows and triangles and all this other stuff around coming out and calling me names. Hasn't happened since the Wheel of Time. What happened with the Wheel of Time? Well, it looks like the same damn thing that happened to The Last of Us. It's non-adaptation. I'm Salty Travel and Sea. I wish I had better news. I wish we were getting good entertainment. But we're not. You have a good day. Take it easy.